Ruslan Momo. He's a assistant professor of technology and operations at the business school at Michigan, Ross. His research focuses on the intersection of data privacy, cybersecurity, and data-driven decision-making in digital economies. He's used this expertise for consulting with many firms such as Target, Microsoft, Amazon, Pinterest, and he's sort of been advising regulatory bodies, including the Federal Trade Commission and France's CNIL, on data governance and privacy-preserving technologies. He's also now, I heard he's at a startup looking at some of these data-driven decision-making. At Ross, he teaches courses in operations, cybersecurity, and data privacy to MBA and MBA students. Prior to joining Michigan, he held faculty positions at HEC Paris, Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, and he holds a PhD from NCL.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm not sure whether it's working. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the green light is on. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. So the paper that I'll present today is called Consumer Profiling via Information Design. So this paper has been invited for revisers submitted to American Economic Review. We sent back the revision, so now we are waiting to hear back from them. So this is a good time to get any feedback that we can get, because this will be incorporated, hopefully, either in the second revision or in some revision, okay, or in a next submission if they reject us. Now, this is co-authored with my two co-authors from a couple projects. Itay Fainmesser, who is an economist at Johns Hopkins, and Andrea Galeotti in London Business School. They're both very well known for their work on social networks or games on social networks. Yeah, that's pretty much the information that I wanted to give about them. So in this paper, what I will talk today will be taking a perspective of a platform. So you can think about Amazon, you can think about any other platform. And I will think about, from the perspective of this platform, how does this platform can intermediate the market between the buyers and sellers. And essentially, the way it will intermediate this market will be purely from the perspective of information. Okay, so the only thing that the platform will be doing in this paper, it will be gathering some data, repackaging this data, and sharing this data with other parties. So the platform will not be participating in the market itself, so it will not be setting prices, it will not be selling their own products. So I said it's like Amazon, but it's not really Amazon, because Amazon sells their own products, it sets their own prices, it does a lot of things. Okay, so but I'll take a very minimal environment where this platform does none of this, and the only thing that it does is using this information design. Okay, that will be the whole idea of this paper.
So okay? It's not like Google, for example, that runs an auction.
No. So it's like you can think about maybe eBay in earlier days when it was intermediate. So it's like a purely an intermediary perspective. Okay. The question that we will ask here will be how much can the platform actually learn from engaging in this information design? What is the limit? Is there a limit of learning? And we want to disentangle this learning from everything else. That's why we focus only on intermediary kind of perspective of the platform. Okay, so I will start with this somewhat ill-defined question, I think, just to start the conversation going. It's I'm in a business school, so that means that I'll show you a lot of pictures before getting to the math. Okay, so you'll have to bear with me. Okay, so let's start. Let me practice a little bit my code coding skills, because I'll have to teach soon, and I use a lot of code coding. This is the question. Vijay, what do you think? Do the platforms know everything about us, or can they, in theory, know everything about us?
They can know a lot of it because they are.
But can they know everything? Theoretically, can they learn everything about us? It's a bad question, but can you give me some arguments towards saying that
cookies, they can know what we're doing and track a lot of things.
They know which doctors we visited. They know where we were at.
Which websites I go to. How many times I'm looking for a flight to go somewhere, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so potentially, so it looks like there is some evidence that shows that they know a lot, okay? And but what is the limit, right? And that's exactly the question that I'll ask in today's talk, okay? First, what I'll do, I'll present you some evidence which will say that, well, it looks like, based on what Vijay is saying, companies indeed know a lot, and it looks like it's a disaster, and they know much more than what they are supposed to know. But then I will present some more evidence, which will actually go in the opposite direction, and will say that, you know what, maybe what they know is not really of very high quality, okay? And maybe they don't really know everything. Okay, so of course we are surrounded by lots of different platforms. So you can think of Google, Facebook, Netflix, nowadays it's ChatGPT, right? And others. So yeah, that's a good idea. It's hide floating meeting controls. Go down, 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 down. Yeah, this one, yeah. Perfect, thank you. Now we have the bottom bar.
That's fine, bottom part of it. Oh, yeah, that's where I click them, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we are surrounded with all these platforms. They collect a lot of data about us. Any app on our phone knows where we were at yesterday at 3 p.m. They know that we visited this doctor. They can predict, or they can potentially infer that we have this health condition based on the doctor that we visited, right? So this is Financial Times report from a couple of years ago. I think they found out that 9 out of 10 Android applications are sharing data that you, like your data, with 10 third parties. So this is the median Android application. This is just 10 third parties, okay? Some of these third parties are Google, Facebook, and big companies, but some of these maybe some third parties that you've never even heard of. A lot of those are actually data brokers. So Equifax, Oracle, LiveRamp, Axiom. So these are some of the data brokers. Maybe some of you haven't heard of those ever. So Equifax, most of us know about it because they collect our credit rating, right? But actually they are a data broker. Apart from a credit rating, they collect a lot of information about whatever we do, okay? Oracle, LiveRamp, these are some of our other big examples. So what they do essentially, they collect different parts of data about us from different sources. They package this data somehow and they sell it. They sell it in two different ways. So one way to sell this data is that they just collect the data, and then the company comes to them and says, can you sell me the list of people, let's say male, 30 to 35 years old, who are drinking Budweiser beer on this Friday watching Super Bowl? Okay, here is a list for you, 1,000 users, this costs you this much, okay? So that's one way how these companies operate. Another way these companies operate is that they can append data to what you know. So let's say you know something about your users, but you don't know their, I don't know, age. So you can ask them to add this. A lot of the data that they collected is the data that they got from somewhere, but a lot of the data that they collect is also inferred data. So they ran some, I don't know, linear regressions, and they inferred that this person is of this age based on the behavior, okay? So these companies share with Facebook, with Google, with other companies. Anyone can actually buy data from, like you yourself can go and buy data from these companies, okay, if you want. And Wall Street Journal said that it's a big mess, and indeed it's a big mess. Like hugely, this market is unregulated, so there is no regulation regulating the market of data brokers. I think only Maine or I think Vermont has a regulation about it, okay? Okay, now another argument that I'll make here is that in the same way as data brokers are in full control of what to do with the data that they know about you, companies, like more legitimate companies like Amazon and Meta, they also have full control over the data. So in other words, they can collect the data, they can repackage this data in any way they like, they can coarsen the data, they can throw out part of the data, they can do whatever they want. So for instance, Amazon can split your data, can split users based on geographical segments, based on demographic segments, based on behavioral segments, and it can present these buckets of users to the sellers. In the same way, Facebook or Meta does the same thing. So for instance, when you target your ads on Meta, you can choose which buckets of customers do you want to target. So let's say parents with toddlers who are divorced, who are in management, so we want to target this bucket. In other words, all these companies, they have a universe of data, and they can coarsen this data in any way they like. this is what we'll call this is what sometimes is called information design, and this is what we'll call information design in this paper. Okay, so you have a bunch of data and you do something with this data. Okay, and whatever you do with this data can be probabilistic, it can be deterministic. So we will talk more about this, but for now, this is an example that illustrates what you're doing. So not surprisingly, so it looks like companies know a lot. Companies have full control of what they do with the data. So not surprisingly, Americans and people in general are getting very concerned about their privacy. So there was some survey by Pew Research Center which found that 85% of Americans feel very concerned, feel lack of control over their data, and so on and so forth. So in general, the views towards privacy are quite fatalistic in the society. So every time I teach an MBA class, I ask my MBA students, which ones of you care about privacy? Usually it's like 80% of people raise their hands. I ask the rest 20, why? Like, why didn't you raise your hand? They say, well, because it's out, the data is out there. Google already knows everything about me. So what's the point? So this is the fatalistic kind of view towards privacy. I have a new paper exactly on this, which does a laboratory experiment and studies how fatalistic are users or are people with regards to their privacy. We find that we are. Okay? So people are worried. Vijay, you had a question?
I think the bigger issue is more the various data breaches. Half of them you don't know about, or you know about, and then you're sort of protecting your data in various ways, and you don't know if it's actually being protected.
Let's start with the breach of the University of Michigan a couple of years ago. Do we even know what kind of data got leaked? No.
They don't tell you that.
We know that some sensitive data, I think they mentioned that social security numbers and other things got leaked. So
now everything is behind the wall, so you can't even the course thing you have to go sign in.
Yeah, I think for most of the data breaches, what we observe is just the tip of the iceberg. There are lots of data breaches which go undetected. There are lots of data breaches which are detected but never reported to, or smaller ones, or like I think the only ones that get reported are either the big ones or some big cases. Like if Google gets hacked, then they will report.
The bigger thing is that all the externality imposed by those breaches are all on the consumer, and then you have to clear up your records. The companies don't do it.
Yeah.
I think
that's what University of Michigan did. They said, here is a free subscription to something for 2 years. And then then it expires.
I think I feel that's an under discussed issue, that the externalities imposed on the consumer. These data breaches and how much data is there.
It is like I think the bigger question, the first order question is, what does it mean? Like, what does a data breach even mean for a consumer, right? Because the data is a very interesting product, right? So it's not like shoes. If my shoes got stolen, right? Someone has these shoes and I don't have these shoes. If my data got stolen, then I have this data and someone else has this data. And if they pass this data to someone else, this third person will have this data, right? So there are all these
easily replicated.
Right. So we cannot remove it, right? In one place. Or regulations claim that we should be able to do that, but this is not working. And we'll talk about regulations just in a second. Okay, so what I tried to illustrate in these few slides is that companies collect a lot of data. They know a lot about us. It's a huge market, right? We don't even know where our data is. Do I even know that my data is being sold to Equifax or LiveRamp? Definitely not. Okay, and so we as consumers, we get quite worried about it, right? So some of you would say, well, there are all these data protection regulations right now, right? So in Europe, it's GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. In California, it's Consumer Privacy Act. So these are considered to be as the most stringent kind of the model regulations. In China, it's Personal Information Protection Law, and so on and so forth, right? The question is, do they even work? And GDPR started in 2018, so that's what, 7 years ago. CCPA somewhere around that, so 7 years ago. And after 7 years of it running, it became quite clear that it's pretty much not working at all. Okay, so I think the only effect that we've seen is all these cookie banners that appear when we go to the websites, but that's pretty much the only effect. Okay, so before I tell you why it doesn't work, I'll actually, like, for some of you who don't know how these regulations work, I'll talk just briefly how they work, and then we'll go to why they don't work. Okay, so let's say if you think about GDPR, the whole idea of GDPR is to say that customers should have control over their data. So they should give explicit consent to anyone who wants to work with their data, collect their data, process their data, do whatever with the data. So customers have to opt in or give a permission to a company to even collect the data or use the data or process the data. Without that, the company cannot do anything. That's why you see all these cookie banners. California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, is a little bit different. It's opt-out decision. So companies can do whatever they want as long as you don't say stop. If you say stop, they have to remove the data. So it's a very different technology. And like, it's a very different technology. That means that companies have to comply differently with these regulations, okay? So the idea is good, but the problem, like, there are lots of problems with data regulations. The first biggest problem is that it's not widespread. So even if you look at the United States map, each state is responsible for their own data protection or data privacy regulation on their own. So that means that there are states like even Michigan or Kansas or some other states which are not covered by any regulation. Of course, there are HIPAA acts and other, like some medical regulations, but let's say general data privacy regulation, there is it's non-existent, let's say in the state of Arizona, okay? And let's say a regulation that you have in Texas, the green state, versus the regulation that you have in California, CCPA, may be very, very different. One may be opt-in, one may be opt-out, and a huge number of other differences. So that's the first problem. So we don't have regulation established everywhere. And even if you have this regulation established, like in some states or in some countries, these regulations are very different. Okay, so which raises the first question: how do companies even comply with these different regulations? Do they comply with the maximum of those, with the minimum of those, or like, it's a good research question, actually. So the economists actually said that GDPR was seen as a role model at some point, but now it turned out to be an enforcement flap after 7 years of running. So the fact that the regulation is not everywhere is one problem. Another problem is that it's very hard to enforce. So I was talking with the regulators here in the US, FTC, and then back in France. So it's a French regulatory agency. It's called CNIL France. The way they work is that they have around 15 people, and they're responsible for the whole privacy regulation of France. It's 15 people getting paid, I don't know, 30,000 euros per year, or maybe 50,000 euros. Okay, so they're understaffed. So what they usually do, they usually go after Google or Apple and issue some fines. That's it. They never go after moderate-sized companies, small-sized companies, never. And most of the enforcement is about checking whether these cookie banners are out there or something like this. Okay, so it's not a proper regulation. It's really hard to enforce. It's really hard to regulate. Okay, and they protect the data that is already collected. Yeah, so that's the first problem. The company's already collected the data, and then the regulators come and say, okay, now you need to establish some barriers around this data. Finally, the final problem is that the threats keep changing, right? The hackers are becoming smarter. I don't know, nowadays we have LLMs. Just a couple of years ago, we didn't have LLMs. Nowadays, I take my brokerage account, I take the financial data from my brokerage account, and I just plug it in ChatGPT, okay? I was hesitant to do that a couple of months ago, but now I do that. So that means that threats are changing, the privacy landscape is changing, everything is changing, right? So we have to, it's really hard to enforce any of these regulations and protect privacy of customers. Now, so it looks like companies are collecting a lot of data. Consumers are really worried. Consumers are fatalistic. They pour this data out to the companies. It's a mass environment, so who knows where the data is flying. So it turns out that then, if you take this very basic economic problem of pricing with asymmetric information, third-degree price discrimination with asymmetric information, where you have a company, Your consumers have different valuations for the product. So consumers value the product differently. Let's say this guy values it at $12, $19, and so on. If I am Amazon or some platform like this, instead of selling at the uniform price, I can personalize prices to each individual customer based on their individual preferences. Do we observe that? Wait, do we observe that?
A little bit. Honestly, I don't know.
If you tell an airline that they are doing this, they'll come back at you and they'll say, no, we are not doing this. We are pricing customers based on buckets. We are not pricing them based on their individual whatever, right? We are like essentially we have much more coarser buckets as compared to really individual pricing. So it's not really third-degree price discrimination and some other price discrimination, okay? But indeed, we see some of that, right? So I think
Question on the chat saying, is this price discrimination? I guess
what's that?
matching to your value to pay, is that price discrimination? That's a good question. Yeah. Willingness to pay should, yeah.
Yeah, it can be price discrimination, right? So, and we see some of it going, right? So we see, as you said, airlines are doing that. So if you log in with a different browser, they will charge you maybe more. If you use Mac laptop, they will charge you more. We see, so these are somewhat old examples. In general, third-degree price discrimination is prohibited. There is a law prohibiting it. But the problem is that you can price discriminate your customers in a very different, like in many different ways. You can give them coupons, you can give them discounts. It's doing the same thing, it's just in the opposite direction, right? And no one prohibits this. Like take a look at this Facebook thing. So Facebook lets advertisers exclude users by race. Okay, so this is quite scary. And it just shows that Facebook is doing some sort of this thing. So it's not necessarily pricing, it's something else, it's targeting, but still, we're like, even big companies are doing that. Okay, so we see some of that. So the question that I'll ask here is, are consumers in trouble? Are we in trouble? So companies know a lot about us. Regulations are not working. Companies are price discriminating, or they have all the information to price discriminate. Are we in trouble? Are we? No. Why not? Not convinced?
An optimist.
You're an optimist. Okay, very good.
Your customers.
Okay. Let me show you some, I promise you the evidence for kind of the fact that we are in trouble as consumers and against it. So let me show you the opposite evidence. So this is not survey, this is a paper by Catherine Tucker, who is a marketing prof at MIT, and her student, Nika. I think he's in New Zealand or in Australia now. So they gathered some data from data brokers, and they had some other data, which the true data, okay? So, and they compared this data from the data brokers with the true data. What they found out was that, let's say, a simple task of gender classification, male, female, was correct only in 42.5% of the cases. How good are we doing here?
Worse than
if we were just flipping a coin, we would do much better, right? Age data was correct in 23% of the cases. People interests were correct in 80% of the cases. This one is easier, right? If you live in the US, most probably you watch American football. And if you're not, then you're in these 20% of the cases, right? Maybe. So what this is showing us is that, yes, companies have a lot of data about us, but is this data even of high quality? So for us to really be in trouble as consumers, for the companies to perfectly match our willingness to pay, the companies really have to know everything about us and to have this perfect information about us. But in reality, they have very poor information or very poor quality information. So
I mean, it seems like certain things are better, like age data, they seem to be very good, better than random.
Yeah, so if you're selling you a t-shirt of soccer versus American football, they most probably, they'll get it right. But if you're, I don't know, doing something else, which is based on gender, maybe they'll not do it right. So I think this is quite aligned with some other survey by Pew Research Center, which asks people how, like, when they observe these ads on Facebook, how well are they aligned with their tastes and preferences? And only 27% of the people said that, well, they are not. They're not really aligned. Okay, so this is, as I said, this is an opposing kind of view on the same question. Okay, so on the one hand, we have this fact that companies collect a lot of data about us. They know everything. They know where we were at last night, which doctor we visited, and so on. They sell this data. Everyone has this data. They have full control over this data. Regulations don't work. So that's one side. On another side, we have these observations or evidence of the fact that, well, this data may not be of the highest quality. And the two questions that I'll ask in today's talk will be, how much can the platform actually learn about consumers? What's the theoretical limit? Okay, if you make it easy for the platform to learn about consumers, is there a limit, or it can learn indefinitely, or as much as there is out there? And what are the welfare implications? In other words, are we as consumers screwed or not? Or in general, like, what is happening with the welfare? Okay, so to give you a sneak peek preview of the results, the answer to the first question is that, well, there is a theoretical limit to learning, and it is defined by the properties of the problem. And the answer to the second question is actually, we as consumers, we are actually better off because of the fact that the platform engages in this information design, collects data, packages data, and so on. So this is actually good for us as consumers. Okay, and I'll explain why this holds just in a second. Okay, just for those of you who don't know anything about me, I'll make this small 30 seconds detour here, and I'll like briefly introduce my research here. So if any of you get interested in any of these topics, please feel free to come to the south part of campus and talk to me, or or set up a Zoom call. So in general, a lot of my work that I do is looking at how should we change traditional operations and business models in light of all these issues with privacy, cybersecurity. So how do they change what the companies should do, okay? And I look at it from different perspectives. I look at it from perspective of consumers who are worried about their privacy, who are making potentially strategic or non-strategic choices. I look at it from the perspective of companies, platforms. What should they do if there is a new regulation which says, well, you know what, all the algorithms have to be differentially private? What is, like, is there any loss to the company? How should the company even do that? Like, from the perspective of the algorithms, how should it change its, let's say, pricing algorithms or certain optimization algorithms? I look at it from the perspective of governments and regulators. How should we regulate these economic markets? And I look at it from the perspective of the adversaries, okay? So these are some of the papers of mine. Yeah, again, if you get interested in any of these topics, feel free to reach out. Okay, so once again, we'll be looking at these two questions. We will focus on the platform, which is an intermediary in the market of buyers and sellers. Okay, and we'll see how much can the platform learn, and is it good or bad for the consumers and for the welfare. There is a ton of literature on this question. I think the closest related paper to this work is Bergman, Brooks, and Morris, which is sometimes called BBM, BBM 2015. But this paper and other papers in this stream, they presume that the data is already known by the platforms. And the question that they ask will be, okay, what is the limit of, like, what can the firm do with price discrimination, knowing the data? But here we'll not make this assumption. We'll say, well, what if we start from scratch? We start from the environment where the platform doesn't know anything. How much can it learn through price discrimination, through information design? Then there is this second stream of literature which looks, which is more operations research related, which looks at this trade-off between exploration and exploitation, looks at the dynamic pricing, for instance. But in this case, most of these papers assume that the player who is pricing is also gathering the data, so it's the same player. So here we separate these roles. So there is a platform which is intermediating the transactions, gathers data, packages data, and then there are sellers and buyers who are separate entities, okay? So, and I'll explain, like, we do that to actually separate learning, separate the question of how much can be learned not to confuse it with pricing decisions, okay? Okay, so this is the model overview. I'll give you some overview first, and then we'll go a little bit more into details of the model. Again, as I said, there is a platform. Think about eBay or Amazon, but imagine that Amazon is not selling their own products or is not dictating prices to the sellers. So the only role of the platform is to gather data, package data, and provide it to sellers. There are buyers and sellers. There is a unit mass of short-lived consumers or buyers. They live just for one period. And there is just one short-lived seller. This seller lives for one period. In every period, there is a new seller, there is a new buyer. We make this assumption that this is a base model assumption. We will relax all these assumptions later on. But for now, we make this assumption to make learning easier for the platform. So think about it. If my buyer is long-lived, that means that the buyer may not buy the product in this period to hide their information, so strategically wait for the price reduction in the next period. So if anything, this will make learning for the platform harder. So I want to create such an environment where learning is supposed to be easy for the platform. What is the platform learning? The platform is learning valuations of the customers, willingness to pay, okay? So each customer has two characteristics, C and V. So C is observable characteristic. It's observable by the platform. For example, zip code, or it can be multidimensional. Like we don't put any restrictions on this. Zip code, marital status, how many kids, wage, and so on and so forth. And then attached to this characteristic C, there is a willingness to pay. And we assume that all consumers that have the same zip code, marital status, number of kids, wage, and so on, share the same willingness to pay. So in the very basic sense, think about it, like those people who live in a very expensive zip code most probably have a higher willingness to pay for, I don't know, Mercedes rather than Ford or Toyota. And those people who live in a less affluent zip code, they have lower willingness to pay for this, okay? So again, this C can be multidimensional. So nothing prevents us, like there are no limitations on C, okay? Short-lived seller will set prices, okay? It will set prices based on the information that the platform provides to the seller. The platform will provide some tags of the consumer. So it will say, that's VJ, VJ has tag X1. Okay, that's Wade. Wade has tag X2. And the seller will be pricing based on these tags. The seller will not be observing the characteristic. So they will not be observing the zip code. They'll know if the platform wants to reveal the zip code, they'll know the zip code. But if the platform doesn't want to reveal the zip code and wants to reveal something else, or like some garbled version of the zip code, or maybe some coarsened version of the zip code, well, the platform can do that. And that's what the seller will be pricing. And all of this will become clearer just on the couple of next slides. Sounds good? So that's period T. The game repeats, like it's an infinitely repeated game. The platform lives forever. It starts with no information about the consumers, with just the prior. And over time, it wants to establish this relationship between C and V star of C. So between consumer characteristics and their willingness to pay. Are there any questions?
Prior is on what? On V?
Let's talk about priors on the next slide. On V, yes. There is a prior on both on C and on V. Okay. Let's get my water. Okay. Are there any questions? Any other questions? No? Okay. If I manage to open this bottle, I'll continue. So what the platform does, the platform collects history. So for each period, the platform observes for each consumer seed, so for each zip code, they observe the price that was charged to this consumer and whether this consumer bought or didn't buy. Very easy, okay? So they observe that, let's say, a consumer who lives in Ann Arbor was charged $10, and they observe whether this consumer bought it or not. Of course, if consumer bought the product at $10, that means that their valuation is somewhere above $10. If they didn't buy it, that means that the valuation is below $10. So learning more and more and more will allow the platform to split these consumers into these buckets. But the question is there a theoretical limit? Okay, so now a little bit more structure to this problem. So we'll assume, so the paper, if you read the paper assumes that these characteristics C are drawn from some finite distribution, okay? So there is a finite number of characteristics, n, okay? So general hobbies, again, they can be multidimensional. This number n can be as large as you want, couple millions, or I don't know, billions, okay? And for each C, willingness to pay is drawn at the beginning of time in period 0, and it's drawn from some distribution, okay, with CDF and PDF. Okay, this is your CDF, this is your PDF, and we'll make one structural assumption on the PDF and CDF. I'll talk about it just in a second. For the purpose of this talk, to make my explanations a little bit easier, I'll make a simplifying but not fully mathematically correct assumption. I'll say, instead of saying that there is a finite number of characteristics, I'll say that all the characteristics are drawn uniformly. This causes a mathematical problem with measurability, because now you have essentially a unit mass of consumer characteristics, and each of them is drawing a continuous random variable. So you have a continuum of continuous random variables, which is not a measurable thing. So AR reviewers pointed out to this, and we spent 3 months going into this rabbit hole. So that's why the new model features finite set of characteristics. Nothing changes. The only change to the paper is that all the results have to be probabilistic now. So it's like, instead of saying like with probability 1, now you say there is like for any epsilon with probability larger than 1 minus epsilon, something happens, okay? So which means that we have some convergence, okay? But for the purpose of this talk, assume that C is drawn uniformly. Sounds good? And for each C, there is a drawn from this distribution variation. Okay? The two assumptions that I'll make on the distribution are pretty standard. So I think this one is like nothing even to talk about, but this one is IGFR property, generalized failure rate, which essentially means that this object, V times PDF divided by complementary CDF, is increasing, or increasing, which guarantees that your profit function is single peaked. Instead of this, you can assume that your profit function is concave. You can assume that it's single peaked. It doesn't matter, okay? Economists like this, operations people like that, like every field has their own favorite assumption. I'm operations, so I like IGFR. Economists like, I think, something else. So we'll work with this, okay? So the only thing that it says is that this object, P times the demand under this price, so that's the profit, is single peaked. It can look like this, but then there should be a peak. Any questions? Okay, so consumer's utility is super simple. Valuation minus price. That's it. Okay, price that was charged to the consumer. Okay, now let's talk about the kind of the meat of the paper, information design. Okay, what does the platform do? So the platform observes the history. Based on this history, it can attach a signal or a tag to each consumer. So remember, the platform observes your zip code, and they know some history about your zip code. They know that, 2 periods ago, this zip code didn't buy at $10. 1 period ago, this zip code bought at $5. So they know something. They can take this information, split it, do something, and attach these tags to each of the consumers. So instead of presenting consumers to the seller as zip codes, the platform will present consumers to the seller as tags. Tag number 1, tag number 1, tag number 2, tag number 3. Okay, or signal 1, signal 2, signal 3. So think, for instance, about the case where imagine that I have just 4 zip codes: Ann Arbor, Los Angeles, Evanston, and Paris. Okay, these are 4 zip codes that we have. This is the universe of the zip codes. Okay, this is what the platform observes. The platform knows something about these zip codes, so it has some posteriors about their valuations, and we'll talk about posteriors just in a second. What the platform can do, the platform can take, let's say, all the people in Ann Arbor with zip code of Ann Arbor, all the people from Evanston, and merge them under one tag let's say premium Midwest. That's the tag, X1, premium Midwest, okay? So essentially what the seller will see when the seller faces a consumer, let's say VJ walks into the store, the only thing that the seller will observe will be that is VJ in premium Midwest or a capital of a fashion, or X1 or X2. They will not know which zip code VJ is coming from. Clear? So let's say the platform can take all the Los Angeles people, all the Paris people, put them under the tag X2. That's deterministic information design. We can think about probabilistic information design too. So we can think about information design where for each consumer in Ann Arbor, a platform flips a coin 50-50 and allocates them to either X1 or X2. So 50% of Ann Arbor goes to X1, 50% goes to X2. Then let's say here it's a different point. Let's say 90% and 10%. Then it will be like some weird garbling, some weird construction of tags. So, but that's the information design. The platform is free to do whatever they want as long as it's consistent. Okay, so like the platform cannot come up with something very weird and something out of the, like something that doesn't, where consistency doesn't hold. So it cannot say like, it cannot take Ann Arbor people and come up with a little bit more of Ann Arbor people who don't exist. It has to work with all the Ann Arbor people. Is it clear what the platform is doing?
So is there, what's the gap between this problem and the one where I only get to observe sort of what the sales were like for the premium Midwest and not actually observe what happened for Ann Arbor and Evanston? So I only tell you, as the platform, I only tell you that it's premium Midwest, but I do get to actually go and observe what the Ann Arbor decisions and what the.
Yeah, so like are you asking about the seller? What does the seller observe?
No, I'm asking about the learning problem for the platform if the platform doesn't actually get to observe all the choices made by the consumers, but only the fraction of premium Midwest.
Are you asking why would the platform do that?
Is the platform, is the learning problem harder than for the, okay, it's weakly harder, is it strictly harder for the,
For who?
for the platform?
Then what?
Then, so right now, after I tell you that's, that VJ is premium Midwest.
Yeah.
You offer a price.
Yeah.
And then I get to see whether he bought or not. But I remember that he's from Ann Arbor. I don't forget that.
Yeah.
Right? I don't only see that he's premium Midwest.
Yeah.
Whereas I might only get back sort of information about, say, what fraction of premium Midwest people bought at that price. So that's a different problem, right?
Yeah, it is a different problem. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is it much harder than for that? Maybe yes. I don't want to.
I think there will be no learning in this problem. Like if the platform only observes, okay, so you're asking what is the history that the platform observes? Right now, the platform observes how it assigned text. So it knows that VJ is premium Midwest, but it also knows that VJ is coming from Ann Arbor. And it knows that Ann Arbor people bought under price $10. So that's what it knows. If it didn't know that Ann Arbor people bought under $10, or if it didn't know that VJ is Ann Arbor, and it just knew this. So first of all, I'm not even sure how would it even assign text? Who would assign text then?
No, it knows that VJ is Ann Arbor, but it doesn't know. Well, okay, maybe I'll try.
It doesn't know what Ann Arbor people paid
I'll
in the
try the
previous
question
year?
again later when.
Okay, let's revisit this question, okay?
Sorry.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, so now nothing prevents the platform to assign, like to do some sort of full information disclosure, right? So the platform can say, you know what, Ann Arbor people have their own tag X1, Los Angeles people have their own tag X2, Evanston people X3, Paris people X4. That's like full information disclosure of some sort, okay? So that means that then whatever seller knows will be exactly the same what the platform knows. So assigning tags to groups of people is kind of a way of coarsening the data and presenting these more coarsened data to the, like the way of garbling the data and presenting this garbled data or coarsened data to the seller. And the question that we'll ask here is, with this information design, can the platform learn everything? Can it, like, eventually, under some information design strategy, does there exist an information design strategy that allow the platform to learn all the mappings between C and V of C in the long run? Okay, that's the question. So when the seller observes the tags, they form posteriors. How do they form posteriors? Based on the history. In the base model, we'll assume that the sellers also observe the history. So they know that Ann Arbor people bought at $10 in the previous period. They know that they didn't buy at $5 2 periods ago, and so on and so forth. There is an extension which says, okay, what if sellers don't even know that? Then kind of learning becomes a little bit easier for the platform, but still, there will be a diff. Anyway, so what the seller will do, the seller will form a posterior. Okay, so they'll say, oh, you know what? I know the rule that assign tags, so the rule will be no. I know that the platform assigned all Ann Arbor people together with Evanston people. I know that Ann Arbor in the last period bought at $5. Evanston bought at $10, and 2 periods ago they bought at some other prices. So based on all this information, I'll form a posterior. Posterior on what? On the valuations, on the willingness to pay. So for instance, for premium Midwest, I'll know a posterior that their valuations are distributed somehow like this. For capitals of fashion, I'll know another distribution. And what I'll price as a seller will be tags. So I'll assign a price to a tag. So PX1 and PX2. So these will be the two prices. I'll assign them based on the posterior to maximize my short-term profit as a seller. Okay, we'll talk about long-term or kind of long-lived seller just like at the end. For now, assume that the seller is short-lived. Okay, so as I said, the seller is setting prices PX1 and PX2 for each of the tags. So we assume that there is zero production cost for the seller. The seller observes full history, but doesn't observe. The only difference between the seller and the platform is that the seller doesn't observe the characteristic C, the zip code, the true zip code. Okay, and it takes all the information into account, maximizes their own profit. Okay, so this is a timeline and equilibrium. Nothing interesting here. It's a standard preferred Bayesian equilibrium. Everything has to be consistent. Okay, so I'll not spend time here.
What's not clear here is what's the utility of the platform?
That's a good question. We get this question all the time. There is none. So we are agnostic about the utility. It can be anything, like with an asterisk here. Okay.
I mean, why is the platform choosing a particular data coarsening?
But the key here is the question. What is the question that we ask? The question that I ask is, is there any strategy that allows the platform to learn everything? Or looking at all the strategies in the universe, what is the limit to what the platform can learn? Some of these strategies are maximizing its profit. Some of these strategies are maximizing something else. Some of these are maximizing something else, right? But across all these strategies and policies, is there a one which allows the platform to learn the full mapping? Or if not, then what is the limit?
Is also allowed to be time varying, as in, are you allowed to change your design in the middle, or you fix the design?
We fix the design in the first period. This design is kind of communicated to the sellers. That's how they form the posteriors. Okay.
So this perfect Bayesian equilibrium is just for the sellers. Because the consumer behavior is fixed.
Yes. So the only asterisk that I wanted to put here is that we want the platform, like we can consider any profit function or whatever function for the platform as long as it's not directly participating in the sales. As long as the platform, so for instance, if the platform starts to charge commission of the sales, right? So that means that the platform is interested in the price, directly interested in the price that the seller sets. It's a little like, I'll show you what happens in this case, okay?
Because the platform is long-lived and it'll influence the thing.
Yeah. So for instance, if a platform charges per subscription, let's say it just cares whether the seller is there or not, that's a good case, okay? If the platform charges a shipping fee for each product, it's not a good case because, well, you know what? The platform can change this shipping fee and affect the prices. You increase the shipping fee, you affect the prices. And with that, the platform will be able to induce experimentation. So we want, in the base model at least, we want to keep this incentives of the platform to experiment away. Okay, yes, it has incentives to experiment, but indirectly it cannot influence. Like, we want the platform not to be able to influence the prices directly. Okay, so the only way the platform will be able to influence the prices here in this base model is through careful attachment of tags and through posteriors that the server base their prices on. So let's start with the first question, okay? So this is the main result of the paper. And in English, it sounds like this. The platform can learn quite a lot, but not everything. There is a natural limit. The platform can learn pretty much everything up to any precision level about low valuation consumers. It can learn to distinguish those. And it cannot learn about high valuation consumers. There is a limit. So that means that, for instance, imagine that this is a true mapping. So these arrows show you the true mapping. So imagine that your Los Angeles people have valuation of, what is it, 7.8. Your Paris people have valuation of 8. Your Ann Arbor people have valuation of 0.25. Evanston have 3.5. There is some cutoff or a threshold above which you don't learn anything. So that means that in the end, irrespective of which information design strategy you run, you will never be able to distinguish between Los Angeles people and Paris people because they're above this threshold. But you will be able to perfectly distinguish between these people up to any precision. You can cut it in any way you like, okay? So you'll be able to distinguish between these people, but you'll not be able to distinguish between high valuation consumers. Okay, that's the result in English. The result in math looks a little bit pretty much the same. So I will denote with PU uniform price. So this is the price, or like the price that the server charges under the prior. So it's just maximizing P times 1 minus f of P. So it turns out that this cutoff that I showed you before is exactly this uniform price. If consumer's valuation is above uniform price, the platform cannot learn much about this consumer. The only thing that the platform can say is that, well, these consumers have valuation somewhere above this uniform price. The distribution is just truncated version of the original prior distribution to this interval. That's it. For the consumers here, whose valuations are here, pick any epsilon, as small as you would like. And I can cut this interval like in this very, like I can make my learning as granular as you want. So even if my consumers are really close to each other in terms of the valuations, I will be able to distinguish them as long as you like choose this epsilon small enough. Is it clear, this result? Any questions? Okay. Now, the question is, how do we show this? And it's a proof by construction, essentially, okay? So we'll do the proof in 2 steps. I'll show you the first step, and I'll show you the second step, and I'll use a uniform example just to illustrate things, okay? But again, remember, it works for any IGFR distribution. And I think like the somewhat beauty of this result, and that's what the editorial team agrees with us, is that this result is quite robust. You can extend the model in this way, that way, that way. The only thing that changes in most of the cases is that this threshold moves somewhere, but it's never 1. So there is always this threshold, but it's never 1. There is always a limit to learning. So, okay, we start with a prior, right? So that's my prior. I don't know, like I have a bunch of people with different zip codes. I don't know anything about them. The only thing that I know is that their valuation is somewhere from 0 to 1 uniformly distributed. That's the only thing that I know. If I give this information to the server, what will the server price? Uniform distribution, what will the server price? 0.5, right? Half. Once they price half, so that's their pricing decision. So essentially, the only, like with prior, my only tag is just 1 tag, right? I cannot separate the consumers as a platform. And my only tag is just this 1 tag, okay? So the server prices half. When they price half, all the consumers who have valuations above half, they buy. all the consumers with valuation below don't buy. So now the platform observes that these consumers, let's say consumers who live in Los Angeles, Paris, are high valuation consumers, they bought. So their valuation is definitely about half. Consumers who live in Ann Arbor and Evanston are low valuation consumers. Their valuation is a truncated version of the prior, below half. That's what the platform knows. So in the first step, I'm using full information disclosure. So the seller discloses everything that it knows to the seller. Okay, so going back to the economics 101, this is seller's profit. The area here is consumer surplus. The area here is deadweight loss. These are market inefficiencies. Okay, so what can I do now? Well, the platform, again, we are running full information disclosure. The platform has two groups of consumers. So it can assign two different tags, the green tag, X1, and the red tag, X2. Okay? So if I'm a seller and I'm given this, what will I charge? So I tell you, hey, look, these are all the consumers sitting with valuations from 0 to 1/2. What will the seller charge? It's uniform, right? 1/4. If I give you this, these are all the consumers from 1/2 to 1. What will you charge? It's a tricky question. And like essentially the whole idea of this paper is in this question. What will you charge? This 0.75? You will charge 1/2. Why? Well, look, previously I gave you the full interval of the consumers and you charged half. So you threw away all these consumers. Now I'm giving you exactly the same consumers that you sold your product to without just those that you threw out. Why would you change anything? It was already optimal for you, right? So you price exactly at half. And that's the whole idea. There is no incentive. There is no intertemporal incentive for the seller to push this price above 1/2. And I'll show you how to create some other incentives just in a second. But for the seller to price above 1/2, there is no incentives. The platform cannot create this incentive through information design only to price above 1/2. So we charge, so seller charges 1/2 to green guys, 1/4 to these guys. So this separates the red tag into two again, right? So we get this picture now. So these guys buy, those who have valuations in between 1/4, 1/2, those don't buy. Now I have three groups. Let's say I present this information to the seller. I say, hey, look, these are green guys. What will you charge now as a seller? Half. If I give you, these are the guys in between 1/4 and 1/2, what will you charge?
Three. No,
How much?
375.
Are you sure? Are you final exam sure? What will you charge if I give you this? You charge 1/4. Why? Because of exactly the same reason as before here with the green interval. I gave you this. You chose to throw away these people from 0 to 1/4. Why would you move your price above? It was already optimal to price at 1/4. By design, 1/4 was an optimal price for this interval. It still remains the optimal price even for this interval. It's the same set of people that you are selling to at the same price, and it's optimizing your profit. Okay, so what will you charge to the blue guys? Here you will charge 1/8, and you keep like it will be the same progression over and over again. So you'll keep splitting. And look, my deadweight loss became smaller, so that means that there is a little bit more efficiency in this system. My deadweight loss will continue shrinking, and that means that there will be even more and more efficiency here. There will be even more and more consumers. Like essentially, the original uniform deadweight loss will be split between consumers and sellers. So that means that the efficiency will be the inefficiencies will be distributed between sellers and consumers. Okay, so that's what will happen. So I can continue splitting, and I can keep doing that till this interval. Let's say I picked some epsilon, so I can keep doing that till this interval becomes smaller than epsilon. Okay, then we can proceed to the second step. The second step is essentially saying, okay, now I have all these intervals, but remember I showed you this picture where to the left of the uniform price, I was able to split everything into these small epsilons. How do I do that? And the trick here is to use these probabilistic kind of tags. Okay? So again, I keep learning, I keep doing the full information disclosure until my yellow interval becomes small enough, smaller than epsilon. And after that, let me ask you again a new question, like the same question. If I present you a market consisting only of red consumers, what do you charge? 1/4. If I present you the market with red and green, what do you charge? Red and green together. 1/2 by design. So now what will happen if I give you all the red consumers and sprinkling of green consumers, a little bit of green consumers? So I'll do some A/B testing and I'll give you some fraction of green consumers. Well, you'll charge somewhere in the middle. So this is the information design starts to play in. So through that, I can keep splitting my intervals on the left, but there will be no mechanism that allows me to split the original, the first green interval. Why? Because there is nothing above it. So I cannot create the incentives to price in between 1/2 and 1. Sounds good? That's why we get like this was the second step. So in the first step, we split till we do the full information disclosure till the yellow interval becomes small enough, and then we start splitting with this probabilistic tag assignment. Okay, with information design. Okay, so that's the whole idea of this theorem 1. Okay, so all in all, we can learn a lot, but there is a limit, and this limit is defined by this uniform price. Okay, then the second question is, what are the welfare implications? Is it good for the consumers or for the welfare that the platform is engaged in any of this? Okay, so we already showed you that in principle, even if we do full information disclosure, our deadweight loss becomes smaller. That means it's better for us, for welfare, because there is less inefficiency in the market. All this inefficiency is either being attributed to consumer surplus or to the seller's profit. So it's good. That's the answer to the first question. And then the second question is, how can I even, like, if I take this inefficiency at the first place, how can I, like, other information designs, or looking at all the information designs, how can it be attributed to sellers and consumers in different ways? What are all the possible combinations? Okay. So I already know the lower bound on seller's profit. The lower bound happens when the seller doesn't know anything but just the prior, the uniform prior. That's the lower bound. Okay, it's 1/4. Then I know like the upper bound. When do I achieve the upper bound? Pick any epsilon. So this is my interval, right? This is 1/2. So to these guys, I just charge 1/2. But I can pick any epsilon, split it into these small epsilons, and personalize prices to all these consumers. Picking smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller epsilon, in the limit, I'll get pretty much all the deadweight loss, and I'll assign it to the seller. So this is the upper bound. For consumer surplus, that's the lower bound, again, happening on the uniform price, and that's the upper bound. The full deadweight loss can be allocated to the consumers. How do I do that? There is some, like, it's a proof again by construction. This one is a tedious one. I don't want to go into details of this, but it's conducted through some clever mixing of some of the intervals. It's not that you like mix neighboring intervals, but you mix intervals which are disjoint essentially. Okay, so you can achieve that. You can distribute the deadweight loss to the consumers. Okay, so all in all, we are better off. And this picture shows you, compares this paper to the BBM, Bergman, Brooks, and Morris. The red triangle are all the outcomes. Look, on the horizontal axis, you have consumer surplus. On the vertical axis, you have profit. So it shows you all the possible divisions of deadweight loss between consumer surplus and profits. So red triangle shows you all the possible outcomes. So any point inside the red triangle or on the red triangle can be achieved. So let's say if I pick a point, this point, I can achieve, there exists an information design that achieves this consumer surplus and achieves this profit. Here, no information design exists to achieve this. Now, but red triangle starts with the platform knowing all the information already. The green triangle shows you our case where we start with learning, so where we start with no information at all. You can see first that consumer surplus increased and the triangle shrank, right? So it shows you that the set of outcomes of divisions of consumer surplus and profit is smaller as compared to the BBM case. But it's better, like consumers are better. Okay, now I promised to talk about some extensions very briefly. There are lots of those because the editors wanted to know actually how robust, like they actually didn't want to know how robust is this model. They wanted to know when does it break, okay? And it's relatively hard to break this model. So let's say the first extension is about some price experiment. Imagine in the very first period, the platform is allowed to charge, like to make the sellers charge any price they like. Imagine that the seller charges this star. Well, first of all, if this star is below uniform price, then nothing changes. If it's above uniform price, the only thing that happens is that instead of uniform price, now you can learn anything above this star. That's it. As long as this star is not exactly 1, but seller would never price 1 because it gives 0 profit, right? Then we can essentially learn a lot, but not everything. Okay. One modification that breaks the result is the following one. Imagine that consumer's choice is noisy. So instead of following the rule of V minus P above 0, imagine that they look at this V minus P, but then there is on top of that, there is some probabilistic function which says like, oh, you know, with probability something, if this V minus P is large enough, you will buy, but with some other complementary probability, you will not buy. So that breaks the result. Here you can achieve perfect learning. If you have a competition, let's say hoteling model of competition, 2 sellers, seller A, seller B, same idea. You don't learn about the consumers close to the sellers, but you learn everything about the consumers in the middle. If you have long-lived seller who lives for forever or for many periods, let's say with the discount factor delta, then again, this point is not a uniform price anymore. It's something like, this is derived for the uniform case. It's 1 minus 2 minus delta. Delta is below 1, as long as the delta is not exactly equal to 1, which would mean infinitely patient sellers, which is not realistic. Then this P infinity is still below 1, so there is no learning above it. Okay, so this result still holds. So all in all, kind of in this paper, we came up with an environment such that it is supposed to be easy for the platform to learn about consumers. And yet there is a limit to learning. So we showed that the platform indeed can learn a lot about low valuation consumers, but there is a limit, and the platform cannot learn much about high valuation customers. But we as consumers, or like if you think about the welfare, we are in general better off because the platform is engaging in this information design, packaging information, providing this information to the sellers. That's all what I had for today. Thank you.
Questions? There's a question on chat. He said, thanks for having this on Zoom. So if I look at this, so if I make, if the suppliers will, sorry, the platform is willing to pay the sellers to set a higher price, but otherwise they're getting some sort of loss, right?
Yeah.
How much do they have to pay so that you can pretty much learn everything? So that's what that's equivalent to say allowing you to price higher.
So essentially, the only thing that they need to do is push for one period, they need to push the price higher, right? So essentially, imagine that this is your uniform price. Let's look at the uniform case. This is 1/2. Imagine that I want to push you to 3/4. Okay, how much of profit do you undergo? Like, let's say, forget about payment for now. If I'm a seller, my profit function looks like this, right?
So I can find out how much I lose.
Yeah, so essentially this is my 1/2, right? Let's say I want to push you to 3/4. I just need to look at my profit function and just compare these two outcomes. So that's what I need to pay you, right? To incentivize you.
That's assuming I know the.
Assuming that you know what?
But that's assuming I know the F.
You as a platform,
Yes.
yes, yeah, but here we assume that you,
Because you know the.
he-
the.
you know the prior, here we assume that you know the prior, yes. Like, okay, again, going, like, stepping back here, like any scenario where the platform starts to be interested in, where the platform has any mechanisms, direct mechanisms to influence the price of the seller, allow the platform to learn more. So if the platform, again, charges shipping fees, right? That pushes the price somewhere. Or let's say you charge the shipping fee and then you reduce those. Maybe it will push the price. If you charge per transaction, like some percentage of the transaction, that pushes the price, like all of this. So which kind of the way we wrote the original paper was that, you know what, maybe the fact that like everyone is worried about platforms collecting data, but maybe it's not the problem. Maybe the problem is actually that the platforms are participating in these markets. When they don't participate in the markets and when they only intermediate these markets, then everything is fine. We are actually better off. But once they start to participate, what will happen? If I push your price higher, then I'll price discriminate more people. I'll charge, all these people are getting the product at 1/2, right? If I push this price, they'll be getting their product at 3/4. So consumer surplus will be reduced.
I think there's something similar. I don't know if you encountered this, there was a Rosina Rodriguez, I think she was a student of Dave Miller.
Mhm.
Her thesis was on something similar with essentially the platforms also participating in the market and with information design. And
I haven't seen it. I'll take a look.
quite a nice paper.
Uh,
I mean, it's not doing a learning part, but it's just doing that information design.
So
Platform also selling the same good, it has more information than the seller
Yeah.
does.
So BBM is doing the same thing. So they're kind of looking at the limits of price discrimination.
Yeah.
So essentially they're saying,
It's from one,
Yeah.
you create different, you sort of, make the consumers look
yeah,
differently and that,
Yeah.
but this is a different type of.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's Dave, she was, well, econ student, so she was primarily working with Dave.
Yeah, I see. I'll take a look at it.
Sure. I can send you it.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just a different version of the question I was asking earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for inviting.
We'll follow up some other time.
Sure. What's up?
you can see every consumer's purchase decision, basically. I guess so it looks like the upper part of this picture, that seems pretty robust. The lower part of this picture, if I can't see that
You as who? You need to
as
specify.
the platform. I can't, so I can't directly see the purchase
Then it will
decision.
be no learning, yeah, at the bottom either. Like, because if you don't see,
But yeah, if I can't see anything, but if I can see,
I think there is another question, like what if, because here I assume that the seller observes the history. What if the seller doesn't observe the history?
right, sure, yeah.
Then the platform can start garbling histories also, and then you go into this Bayesian persuasion kind of setting of some sort. So there, like, this result will be saved, it's just like this border will. It will be different nature of fractions.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.